call to order the City Council meeting of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida on Monday, March 5th, 2018 at 5:30 p.m. Will you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Rob Baldwin.
Here.
Councilmember Julie Chandler. Present. Councilmember Pamela Gunn. Here. Councilmember Mitchell Crop.
Here.
Councilmember John Petrowski.
Here.
Vice Mayor Wanda Schweer.
Here.
Mayor Leslie Ford Notaro.
Here.
Interim City Manager, Community Services Director Lynn Reeves.
Here.
Finance Officer Melanie Cruzona. City Attorney Paul Marino.
Here.
Thank you. First item is the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any additions, deletions? All in favor?
Mayor.
Mayor, Councilmember Crop
Oh, did he
is
say?
asking to be recognized.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mitch.
Go ahead,
Put your
Councilmember.
microphone, put your microphone right by the speaker.
If we could consider amending the agenda, either 3A or 4A, to include at least a little discussion on the possibility of bringing forward an ordinance on the use of the city seal. My understanding is that in order to protect the seal of the city for only city communications, there should be an ordinance in place. In talking with the city attorney, he thought that might be something we can.
Okay. Do we want to add that to the agenda? Yes.
Yeah, adding the discussion about the use or misuse of the city seal and the remedial action necessary, yes, ma'am?
Okay. So we put that on as 4A. Okay. Okay, the motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Amended agenda is approved. Approval of the February 5th, 2018 City Council minutes. Have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Any discussions, additions, deletions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's passed. Citizens' comments. Each speaker will be recognized once and will be limited to a 3-minute presentation on any subject that is not on the agenda. Do we have anyone that wants to comment? Yes, sir. If you come up to the podium and give your name and address. Did you just raise your hand? Yes.
Dr. William Ward, 199 Louisa Drive, Bel Air Beach. Resident for 30 years. And I hold this area of Bel Air Beach as my home. And I wish it well as far as the decisions of this council. However, I would like to say that this one of your members who is running for re-election, who was elected by flipping a coin. I don't think this does not
To warn on the
belong.
microphone, please, we can't
Right.
hear you.
Oh, yeah, you can hear me?
You've heard of that, we can't hear you.
Good, that's good. Can you hear me? Who is running for re-election, and he puts this in here on the
Sir,
schedule for
it's on the
today to be
agenda.
discussed.
You can add for an item not on the agenda, and that's on the agenda.
It's on the agenda.
Yes.
And I don't think an advertisement should be on the agenda. And this is an advertisement for Mr. Baldwin. And I think it should not be on the
Okay,
agenda. And I object to it.
Fine. Any other citizen? Yes, sir. Come up, name and address.
Hi,
Bill Shaw, 233 Howard Drive. As I recall months ago, and hopefully it is on the agenda, or on your minutes, that whatever, and I'm for these people that are trying to get it underground tonight, or get it done, that we would get the same consideration that they got when Howard and other streets come up. Is that correct? It's on the, it's in the minutes?
Yes, we're doing this neighborhood by neighborhood.
Neighborhood? Yeah, good. Now, I heard through the grapevine, and we know how that is, it could be true or false, that Howard Drive did not want underground, and I'm here to say I've talked to a number of people, it's not majority, I mean, it's not totally every house, but it is a majority that does want underground facilities on Howard Drive. I can't speak to the other streets, but I have talked to a number of people on Howard Drive. It's not a, like I said, it's not a total, but it is the majority want it, and we hope other people will come around. But that was the 2 points I want to make sure that we're doing it neighborhood by neighborhood, and that we want to get on the bandwagon.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Noted. Anyone else? Okay. Seeing no one else, citizens' comments will be closed. Item number 4, an informational presentation by the Bellevue Estates Island Advisory Ad Hoc Committee. Committee member Glenn Gunn has a presentation.
Good evening, I'm Glenn Gunn, member of the Ad Hoc Committee. The purpose of this short presentation is to baseline the Bel Air Beach residents who are not familiar with the undergrounding project, and also provide a quick review for those who are familiar with the project. Basically, the one of the undergrounding project is to move overhead power lines, telephone lines, cables to underground, do it with no impact to customer service or future flexibility. At the same time, a great spin-off of this project is to improve street lighting. The city has started to understand that a master plan for street lighting within the entire Bel Air Beach would be of great value, because there would be very high recurrent cost savings, and the new technology provides great benefits to the community. So far as undergrounding telephone lines and power lines go, we can either live with the current situation in Bel Air Beach, or we can have a community that look more like this. The what of undergrounding, basically to leverage new technologies and directional boring to minimize the impact on the streets and property. Basically, we're not tearing up the streets anymore, tearing up property. We use the newest technology to actually just bore right under the streets and under sidewalks and under driveways. Homes with existing above-ground service from the street, they require some upgrades to their distribution panel and their service meter, because with the power lines coming in from underground, many of the meters are not made so that you can access them from below. So what is the existing above ground? Your house looks like this, and you've got wires going to the top of your roof. That's what an existing above ground connection looks like. What area are we talking about? Well, here's Bel Air Beach. The red star is to go ahead and orient you. We're at City Hall right now. Bel Air Beach is 1.7 square miles, and 70% of it is water. So where's this place called Bellevue Estates Island? 111 properties within that orange border there, and an additional 4 properties immediately adjacent to the bridge on the west side of the 22nd Street Bridge. There's a total of 115 properties involved in this undergrounding project. The why is pretty simple. It's improvement. We hope to improve safety, reliability, and beautification. As far as safety goes, during storms and hurricanes, down power lines prevent the entry of emergency vehicles and the first responders. Have we had down power lines? The answer is absolutely yes, we have. But what we also need to take into consideration is it also prevents the exit of residents during evacuations as well. When we first started looking into this project for the Bellevue Estates Island, we were most concerned about this area where the red arrow is, because that's the bottleneck just to the west of the 22nd Street Bridge, and we've had down power lines there before. And that's what restricted the first responders from getting in and the residents from getting out. But as we started looking deeper into the geography, what we found were there are 9 lines to the west of that bridge, 6 lines to the east of the bridge, another 13 lines, 22 lines on Louisa, 24 lines on the first section of Donato, 36 lines towards the end of Donato, 30 lines on the end of 22nd Street, and 41 lines on Alita Drive, for a total of 181 lines in that section of Bel Air Beach. And by the way, if you live on Howard Drive, there are 33 wires across your road. And if you live on Harrison, there are 38 wires across your road. When we speak about reliability, undergrounding is going to replace a lot of aging infrastructure and eliminate the exposure to storms and the salt air environment. We're going to replace a lot of old equipment and reduce the exposure, which is likely to result in power disruptions, and hopefully we will improve reliability. Old age, heat, salty environment equals reduced reliability. Just think of what it's like if your gas grill sat outside for the next 30 to 50 years, and what it would look like and what you could presume its reliability would be. Beautification, let's remove the clutter, improve the curbside appeal of our properties. Ultimately, let's enhance our property values and conform to our city's mission, which is to have a premier city. We can either have the Bel Air Beach of 2018, or we can have the Bel Air Beach of 2020. It aligns with common sense. The Bel Air Beach City Code requires new construction to conform to undergrounding of utilities because the benefits of safety, reliability, and aesthetics are well established and clearly understood. If that's all well and good, Mr. Gunn, but who's going to pay for all this? Only the 115 property owners will be assessed for the cost of this undergrounding project. No other Bel Air Beach residents will be assessed for the cost of this project. And yes, there are probably going to be some recurring costs, but in the words of our city manager, those recurring costs are negligible. So did I mention who's going to pay for this? Only these 115 residents of Bel Air Beach pay for this. How much? Total construction cost is estimated to be in the realm of $1.6 million. Includes the construction, administrative costs, financial, legal, and contingency costs are built into this. All costs are based on conservative estimates, and we have a high level of confidence that those costs are going to be coming in lower than the $1.6 million that we just did. How much will property owners pay? All 115 property owners will pay an equal core cost for each dwelling on their property. We qualify that with each dwelling on their property because there is one property at 147 Alita and it has 2 dwellings on one property. This delivers underground utilities to the curb. That's your basic core cost, and everybody pays that equally. In addition, the property owner will be responsible for a connection cost from the curb to their individual dwelling. This cost varies due to the existing above-ground or below-ground connection that already exists. How will the property owners pay? Property owners will have the option of a prepayment to avoid finance charges, or they have the option of 20-year financing at an estimated rate of 3.75%. This would be paid annually with their property taxes. It can also be paid in full at any time. This financing will carry a lien against the property in case of default. How much will the property owners pay? Existing underground house connections from the curb, the prepaid amount is $11,078. If they choose to finance it over a period of 20 years, we'll add $849 to their yearly taxes, which is approximately $71 per month, with a total payout of approximately $17,000. So let's put this into context. $70.75 a month, $2.32 a day. For those existing above-ground house connections, prepayment of the original core cost of $11,000 plus an estimated connection cost of $4,500, which is estimated on the high side, for a total of $15,600, or a 20-year financed amount of approximately $1,200 a year, $99 a month, $3.26 a day, which is cheaper than I can get a deluxe cheeseburger and a small fry at Wendy's. The when, after this public hearing and upon approval of City Council, the city will complete the administrative, financial, and legal requirements to begin construction in early 2019. Construction is likely to last approximately 6 months. Who's going to benefit from all of this? Initially, the 115 residents who petitioned the City Council to underground Bellevue Estates Island. But in the long term, all of Bel Air Beach is going to benefit from this. This is essentially the trial run for the city. The city has wisely chosen to do this thing in steps, and let's get some lessons learned from this and figure out what the process looks like and how best to do it. Once we do that, hopefully we'll be able to expand this project into other areas. I don't know if you want to open it up to questions now or hold that till the end.
I think we can probably questions when we get to the ordinance. Does council have any questions? Appreciate your.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks, Lynn.
The item 4A, which was added to the agenda regarding the city seal. Mitch, do you want to speak about that?
Well, only that I said that I would like to have the council consider having the city attorney draft an ordinance to protect the city seal.
I would agree with that. Do we have a consensus to ask the city attorney to draft an ordinance regarding the city seal?
Yes, please.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is there a difference between our logo and a city seal?
The logo, I guess, of which you speak is the city seal. Unfortunately, the reason that Mr. Conk is raising this question is because it was recently improperly used in violation of state law, and we really don't need an ordinance because we have the enabling legislation. We're just going to do a detailed ordinance that spells it out and shows it for what it is, but it was improperly used by a citizen in the city in promoting political candidacies, and it appeared to have been at least not only Mitch, but others have indicated they thought it was somewhat misleading. So that's under investigation by the sheriff right now, and they'll take care of that in the normal course of business. Other issues associated with those ads are being referred, I understand, to the supervisor of elections in Tallahassee. But in any event, it would probably be appropriate, and I've only done it one other time, and that is to take the actual seal and put it into chapter 1 of the city code. I'll do that. That's no big deal.
Thank you. We'll see that then on the April agenda. Okay? Thank you.
And Mayor, there was a retraction that was sent, but I've heard from several people that were upset that they were getting emails, several emails from candidates, but then they were very, very upset that they were receiving it from residents. A couple had expressed that they felt that it was a violation, although it's not illegal to do that. It was not appreciated by the people, some people that were receiving it, but the retraction was not received by everyone that originally got the original email.
Yeah, we understand. That's been forwarded to authorities. Okay, so that we'll have an ordinance on the next month's agenda to clarify the city seal issue. Item number 5, public hearing. Consideration of ordinance 1801. Paul?
This is an ordinance 1801, ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida, amending section 94-210 pertaining to detached buildings, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. We have a motion for ordinance 1801.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion by council? In the audience? Patty, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Baldwin.
Aye.
Councilmember Chandler.
Aye.
Councilmember Gunn.
Aye.
Councilmember Crop.
Aye.
Councilmember Petrowski.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Schwer.
Aye.
Mayor Notaro.
Aye. Ordinance 1801 passes 7-0. Number 6, consideration of ordinance 1802. Paul?
Yes, ma'am. Ordinance, City Council of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida, amending City Code Section 38-87 pertaining to picnic and public gathering permits, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Do you have a motion for ordinance 1802?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any from the audience? Seeing none. Patty, will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Chandler.
Aye.
Councilmember Gunn.
Aye.
Councilmember Crop.
Aye.
Councilmember Petrowski.
Aye.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Schwer.
Aye.
Mayor Notaro.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Item 7, consideration of resolution 2018-03. Paul?
This is a resolution of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida, relating to the acquisition, construction, and funding of capital improvements associated with the underground electrical cable and communication utilities and the installation of street lighting improvements on or adjacent to the Bellevue Estates Island, establishing the Bellevue Estates Island assessment area, determining that the real property comprising the assessment area be specifically benefited by the improvement, confirming the method of assessing the cost of the improvements against the real property that will be specifically benefited thereby, establishing other terms and conditions of the assessments, approving the assessment roll, imposing an assessment on all tax parcels described in the assessment roll, providing the method of collection, directing recorded notices of the assessments, ratifying and confirming resolution 2018-02, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Do I have a motion for Resolution 2018-03?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Questions, comments by council? Oh, Mr. Rowe is going to give us a little update on this.
Is it working now? Good, great. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I wanted to give just a brief presentation on Resolution 18-03. A number of the points that I'll make were made very, very well by Mr. Gunn in his earlier presentation, but this will set the context for the purpose of the resolution, the effect of the resolution, what the steps are next after adoption of the resolution, assuming it is adopted. So first of all, I'd like to start by explaining what a special assessment is. Mr. Gunn referenced the fact that the property owners in Bellevue will be paying for the undergrounding. They'll be doing so through imposition of a special assessment, which is a charge that a local government such as the city can impose against real property in order to pay for public improvement projects such as utility undergrounding and streetlights. The project cost is paid by the property owners who are benefited by the project. As Mr. Gunn pointed out again, the costs are isolated to the community that benefits from the improvements. The primary legal requirements for a special assessment are that the improvement that's being funded has to convey a special benefit to the property that's subject to the assessment. The method of apportioning the cost has to be fair and reasonable in the determination of City Council. And affected property owners have to be given due process, which in the context of special assessments means they have to receive notice of a public hearing before the assessment is imposed, and they have to have an opportunity to approach and address the City Council with respect to the assessments prior to the levy. So the process for imposing this type of charge is set forth in the city's code of ordinances. There's an ordinance that's been adopted that lays out all the legal requirements to ensure due process is met. A given assessment program can be initiated a couple different ways. In the case of Bel Air, States Island, what happened is the property owners submitted a petition process which demonstrated a minimum threshold necessary for City Council to proceed with the assessment program. In this case, the assessment support from affected property owners was well in excess of the minimum threshold contemplated by the ordinance. 2, the City Council can undertake an assessment program on its own motion. It doesn't have to do so in response to a petition. The process usually begins with adoption of an initial assessment resolution. An initial assessment resolution which describes the project, the assessments, collection terms, how it's going to be apportioned among the properties that receive the benefit of the project. Following that initial assessment resolution, which the City Council adopted on February 5th, notices are given, both through publication in the newspaper and mailed notice to affected property owners, telling them about the project, the proposed costs, the term of the assessment, various details about the assessment, and of course, identifying the time, date, and place of tonight's public hearing at which property owners can come and be heard. This step tonight is a step in the process. It's not the ultimate step, but it's basically the step that imposes the assessment. You'll have for consideration this resolution which imposes the assessment on all the properties and sets forth various details and considerations regarding how long it will be collected over, how it will be collected, etc. So these are the steps that have been completed so far for this particular project. The city adopted its assessment ordinance, which is number 1702. It adopted a resolution expressing its intent to collect the assessment in annual installments on the property tax bill mailed each November. It undertook a preliminary cost estimate by an engineering firm that helped with fleshing out the estimated cost of the project. I mentioned the landowner petition process is already concluded, and you can see here there's a breakdown of the responses to the petition process. Of the 115 parcel owners, 95 submitted a response or a petition, of which 85 or 90% approved moving forward with the project. Those votes were cast, by the way, with full knowledge of what the cost was going to be. The costs were made available to each property owner before he or she or the couple cast their vote, whether in favor or against the project. The supervisor of elections reviewed the results, and as I said earlier, the threshold requirement in the assessment ordinance is basically 50%. Here, 90% voted yes, and of those voting yes, 72% accounted for the total assessment load, the burden of the assessment, dollar-wise. I mentioned the initial assessment resolution was adopted on February 5th. It did a number of things that described the project and the two components of the construction. One, as Mr. Young pointed out, is the core cost, the improvements in the right-of-way, and then there's the secondary costs, which are on-site improvements necessary to connect each property to the newly undergrounded facilities and the rights-of-way. It estimated the project cost and the assessment rates. It scheduled the hearing for tonight to consider the final assessment resolution, and it directed that mailed and published notice. So the final assessment resolution ratifies and confirms everything that was stated in the initial resolution, including the confirmation of the estimated project cost, a total of $1.6 million, the rates of the assessment, which for those properties which do not require on-site work is just over $11,000 per dwelling unit. And you can see here the math of how that was derived. The on-site improvements are estimated to be no more than $4,500 for those parcels that require it. Not every parcel requires the on-site improvements. These are, as Mr. Gunn suggested, very conservative estimates. However, there is a built-in cost contingency increase where, due to factors beyond the control of the property owners or the city council, costs might actually be a little bit high. There's basically a 15% margin where the rates could go up by as much as 15% without triggering additional notice requirements under the city ordinance. And of course, the resolution provides for collection of any assessment that's not prepaid at the option of the property owner through annual installments on the tax bill administered by the county tax collector every November. So the assessments are designed to pay for the cost of a project over time. The city is left with determining a source of revenues at the outset with which to pay for construction. This typically happens in municipal financing through issuance of a bond or a note or a loan. It's essentially a loan. The city will obtain a loan from a lending entity and then repay that loan over time when it receives the annual assessment payments. In this case, the Florida League of Cities has a municipal lending program. It's done through their Florida Municipal Loan Council, whereby they either make loans directly to the city or they act as a facilitator to arrange loans between the city and a commercial bank, such as BB&T, SunTrust, and whatnot. The League has expressed their intent to make that financing available to the city. Tends to have favorable financing terms as far as the interest rate is concerned. As I pointed out, the repayments will be set up on an annual basis to coincide with receipts of the assessment revenues each November. Sometimes municipal loans are set up with 2 annual payments, perhaps an interest-only payment in May, a principal and interest-only payment 6 months later. But in any case, limited number of annual payments. The documentation for that loan will include a resolution authorizing the loan. The resolution will approve the form of a loan agreement between the city and the lending entity. And there'll be some sort of a bond or a promissory note. And the bond or the promissory note is really just the written evidence of the obligation to repay the loan. Very, very similar to anyone who has mortgaged a home, taking out a mortgage in order to purchase a home. You give the bank a promissory note. It's the note that acts as your obligation to repay the debt. Same in the municipal concept. Sometimes it's referred to as a bond. The next steps in the project are after tonight's hearing. If the final assessment resolution is adopted, a little bit later in the same agenda, there'll be the bond resolution. As I mentioned, that bond resolution authorizes the borrowing from the League's lending program and approves the form of a loan agreement that would be entered into, facilitating the financing. A little bit later in March and July, the judicial validation process will begin, and I'll get into that a little further in the next slide. Between July and August, we expect there to be a prepayment period, and that's once we've gone through the judicial validation, property owners who wish to prepay their assessment and avoid financing costs and annual interest on the loan can do so. They can pay it in full at their option. At the close of the prepayment period, the city will be able to close on the financing with the League of Cities lending program and obtain the money it needs up front in order to undertake construction. And then come November, the first of the annual payments will begin for those property owners who elected not to prepay. So I mentioned judicial validation. This is a process whereby the city can seek validation from the circuit court of its authority to enter into a debt obligation. There's a series of statutes in our Florida statutes that authorize this type of proceeding. The idea is that when a local government borrows money to undertake a public improvement project, the local government wants to know up front, before it borrows the money, whether or not it has good legal authority to borrow that money and to repay the loan over time through a given source of revenues. It's prudent to do that because it basically eliminates the threat of challenge that might otherwise exist 2 or 3 years after you've undertaken the project. It could be that someone new to the community 2 or 3 years from now doesn't like the fact that their property is subject to an assessment to fund utilities undergrounding, so they attempt to challenge you and sue you. With the validation judgment in hand, it basically stops future challenges, so you know at the outset that you're on good legal footing before you undertake a project and get too far down the road. It's cost effective, it's very, very efficient, it's an expedited proceeding from start to finish. It's usually wrapped up within 2 or 3 months, hence my reference to that 2 or 3 month period and the timeline I suggested. The validation will also extend to the special assessments, which are the security that will be pledged to repayment of the loan. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Council, any questions for Mr. Rowe?
If they're paying a prepayment up front, you said there's a possibility it could fluctuate up to 15%. Where does that come into on the prepayment? Do you have to go back after the people who did the prepayment, and would they have to pay the extra 15%?
Yes, so the design of the assessment program, which was constructed with the full support of the affected citizen, is such that the city will not pay for this project. The property owners will pay the entire cost of it, and they recognize that although the construction costs are conservative, if there is any overage, it's not a gotcha for the city. The city is not going to be on the hook for that overage. It will be the responsibility of the property owners. And mechanically, it can happen a couple different ways. It might be as easy as just informing the property owners that, hey, there was a cost overrun. Instead of $11,078, it's $12,050. Please remit a payment for the difference. Or it could be something more formal, a similar proceeding to what we have here tonight, where we actually adopt some communities refer to it as a completion assessment to make up the gap between the estimated amount and the actual cost.
Can the residents pay it off at any time? I know in the presentation you said July and August.
Taking your microphone.
Yes, ma'am. The assessment can be prepaid, paid in full at any time.
Okay, not just July and August.
However, if it's paid off after the city has incurred the loan, then the prepayment amount will include a pro rata share of the closing costs on the loan, which are expected to be fairly modest. Again, the League of Cities lending program is reasonable as far as the costs are concerned.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council? Okay, we have folks who signed up to speak before this. I'll just call by the way you're put in here. Mark Postov. I apologize if I murder your name, I'm sorry.
I live at 136 Oliva Drive. I'm not here to speak for or against resolution. Undergrounding sounds like a great idea to me. I just have some questions, and I'm not really sure who can answer the questions. I don't think it's you guys. I'm thinking it's the attorney and the people who did the work. So is this the appropriate time to do that?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe for you, if you don't prepay and you elect to do the annual assessment and you sell your property 5 years down the road, is there a lien on your property that you have to fulfill in order to sell? Or is it just going to go on to the next owner?
Do you have other questions?
Yes, I do, if you want to answer that.
Unlike a mortgage that you would typically have to pay in full before you can transfer your property, this assessment is not set up to accelerate. The new property owner would merely step into your shoes and continue to make the annual payments for the term, whatever that might be, how many years left in the 20-year term. With respect to the lien of the assessment, it's equivalent to the lien of property taxes. So the property is not made subject to an $11,000 lien in favor of the city right from the outset. The property is only subject to a lien to the extent of the annual payment. And the lien really only arises in the event you don't make your annual property tax payment. So it's got that nice feature.
The other questions I have are around the, I understand that the work that was done, it ends just past the 22nd Street Bridge. Is that then going to be connected to above ground lines? Or is it underground from there to Bell Boulevard?
I can take that question. The vision is that it's a clean shot all the way down 22nd. So in other words, from Gulf Boulevard all the way down to the cul-de-sac on 22nd, lines are underground. They're basically underground now from Gulf Boulevard to Bay Shore.
That was my question. They're already underground there.
Yes, that's correct. Now, the lines come in from Bay Shore and then proceed down 22nd. The terminus for those lines will be on those properties that are on the northeast corner of Bay Shore 22nd and the property on the southeast corner. So basically, south of the 22nd Street property, there'll be a pole where the lines start above ground again, and on the northeast corner, the lines will start going above ground again up Bay Shore. 22nd is the premium shop.
So there can't be any down lines that would affect this area unless they were on Gulf Boulevard?
Outside of Bellevue Estates Island. I mean, is there a possibility that you could have a power disruption elsewhere in the system on the grid? Yes. If power goes down on Gulf Boulevard, it's likely to affect us.
No, I understand that. I just meant from Gulf Boulevard all the way back will now be underground because it's already
That's correct.
underground on that short section.
It's already underground there.
You probably didn't say that I have
Okay.
questions. Does Duke Energy share in any of this cost, or are the residents paying the entire portion of this?
Maybe I can answer part of that. We actually met with some executives from Duke on Friday, and part of their evaluation, they're right now doing a binding estimate for this work, and part of that is to go through and take an inventory of all the existing infrastructure. And then assign a value to that based on age. And so basically, once they go through that calculation, there will be a credit that is applied toward the new work, to offset the fact that they're replacing aging lines. So that is part of the process. And we talked to them quite a bit about that. And so that's the intent. And part of it is mandated by law through the through the commission, and part of it is, I think, our ability to try to negotiate. Yes, there will be a better.
And that's a good question because it's been brought up, and you were very astute to bring it up, was that we're replacing a lot of equipment for Duke Energy. So, yeah, they should share in the cost of that.
And then just one last question maybe is for the city attorney. If the city goes forward with the rest of the city for underground, and then Gulf Boulevard is part of that, is there a chance that the people already affected by this assessment could have another assessment for additional costs?
The Gulf Boulevard project is being funded by the Board of County Commissioners, I think, that is developed money, so no, that won't affect anybody.
This would be our only assessment related to any undergrounding for the city then?
Right. If we do Harrison
Hopefully,
Street, they
it
get,
will be.
if we were to do, say, Harrison Street, the Harrison Street people would get
No, I understand
assessments.
that.
Yeah.
Gulf Boulevard was really my question, but if it's not within, it's not the city doing Gulf Boulevard, it's the county doing.
That's correct. Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I just want to clarify his question about the lines going from Gulf Boulevard down to Bay Shore. Those are underground, or do they run behind the homes on 22nd? I think he's asking for disruption of above ground lines.
Only, my question was about 22nd, not about the streets on Bay Shore.
Okay, well, 22nd is underground, but I'm not sure in front of the houses, but they might not be underground behind the houses, and that might be the connection that leads down to Bay Shore and to the rest of 22nd.
Yeah, I think that's a correct observation, is the lines that provide power to the houses from Bay Shore up to Gulf Boulevard come in from behind the properties, and power coming into Bellevue Estates Island actually come in from Bay Shore Drive. But so far as the visual aesthetics go, you will not see any lines along 22nd between Gulf Boulevard and Bay Shore.
So I guess that was my question. You're saying that if a line that's on Bay Shore is what supplies the undergrounding for Bellevue Island Estates, then we could lose power because an above-ground line is affected.
That's always a possibility, that's correct. This is just really to minimize our exposure to those power disruptions.
Moving on, the next person who requested to speak is Jenny Henderson.
Hello, my name is Jenny Henderson. I live at 2173 Louisa Drive. My husband Phil and I have lived on Louisa Drive for 25 years and have raised our family there. We were the first people on our street to do a major renovation to our house and have continued to update our home, as most of our neighbors have as well. We have waited for this opportunity for many years and understand the cost that we will bear. We request the City Council to approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Kit Whittington.
My name is Kit Whittington and I live at 131 Alida, and we are new 3-year residents. It's been very exciting to live here. And we do support the undergrounding of the electric, and one of the main reasons we support it is because when the electric is out on our street, I sit and I look at all of the lights that are on Belle Isle, and I'm understanding that part of the reason theirs are on is because they have the underground. So that's one of the main reasons. And so that being said, I understand it, I believe in it, and I urge you to vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis Murphy.
I'll pass.
Okay. Bill Shaw.
I've said all I can say.
Okay. Jane Mason.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming. It takes a community to make change, and it takes a group of people and leaders to affect that change for us. As you know, most of us in the room, believe in what we have tried to do here. We followed process. Thank you, Chris, for your apt presentation 2 or 3 times now. A lot of information on the website, a lot of information being shared in many different formats. So we just thank everybody here, including you guys, for your due diligence and your patience. I did have the opportunity to spend some time with a very high-level executive at Duke University, not Duke University, Duke Energy this morning. And he said to me, he goes, you know what? It's your city's job and your city's charter and your council's charter to keep your infrastructure and your grid updated. And that's what we're trying to do. And they're partnering with us in that. And I know, Rob, you very aptly put that they are going to be giving credits, but they're also losing revenue from the poles. They're losing revenue from some of the things that they get paid rent for now. So I think it's important to recognize it takes a community, whether it's Duke Energy or all of us here together, to make this happen. So we really do ask that you vote for this. As you know, I feel very strongly about it. We've had 2 referendums, a very expensive survey, a petition. We all voted for it. We had 90% approval of this last petition. So how much more do we have to do over a 20-year span of time? I think we followed process. We've been diligent. We've had our quality reviews by the city clerk's office on the submissions that we've made. So we just ask for all of you guys to believe in us and do the right thing. So thank you.
Risberg, I'm sorry.
I'm Ron Risberg. I live at 231 Howard Drive, and I want to echo the comments of my neighbor, Bill Shaw, that it's not just the small group of people who live on the Bellevue Island who are interested in this. Strongly support the underground for all the reasons that both of the presentations we just watched laid out. for the value of the property, for safety, for security of the power grid, for beautification, which includes no longer providing a public toilet for the birds across my driveway where the power lines run. And I have spoken to many of the neighbors up and down Howard Drive. Not all of them, for sure, and almost all of them are in favor of it. As a matter of fact, I have not spoken to any neighbor who is not in favor of this. This is not just one small group of people in a portion of the city. We're all waiting for you to take the action, get this thing going, so we can then expand it to the rest of the city. Thanks.
Steve Schroeder.
Hello, I'm Steve Schroeder. I live at 2209 Bayshore Drive. You echo exactly that statement right there. We moved here 6 months ago, my wife Janice and I. Love this community, love the area. I came from Punta Gorda. We owned a home down there 5 years ago. There are roads that basically have done underground, and it's very effective for resale value of those homes, contrary to the homes that have power lines and that bird poop opportunity for having those overhead power lines. We live 2 doors away from Mitch's at the corner of 22. We're right at the end of 23rd Street on Bayshore Drive. We would really welcome the opportunity to move forward on this. We support all our neighbors and think the whole community would really benefit. And our beautification for this community, I think, is very valuable, and I think we really should go forward with it. Thank you.
Moeller?
I don't think I could add anything more to it. My only thing is, if not now, when?
Okay, fine. Last but not least, BJ Lund.
Sooner or later.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any additional comments from council, questions?
Can I just have something clarified for me? I don't know if it would be Glenn or somebody that was from the committee. Because it was a while ago when I read this. When somebody, or Chris, when there's a lien on the home, in the petition that was sent to the people, was that disclosed? That they would have a lien on their home? In the petition? Yes? Okay, thank you. I thought so, I just wanted to double check. Thank you.
Can I just say?
Yeah.
I don't think that having a special assessment like a CDD creates a lien on the house. It's just a non-ad valorem tax that goes along with the ad valorem tax each year that flows with the property from owner to owner. I don't want to have a misleading statement made that by virtue of this, all of a sudden, there's going to be this heavy lien on people's homes. That's not correct. Am I right, Mr. Rowe?
That's right.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I just have a sort of tangential comment. We have so many different communities now that sound like they might be interested. We might want to put together a little guideline process for them on how to get started and take priorities. Who wants to get their number in first?
Any other? Okay, are we ready to, we have a motion and a second for resolution 2018-03, right? Annie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Bennett?
Aye.
Councilmember Crop?
Aye.
Councilmember Petrowski?
Aye.
Councilmember Baldwin?
Aye.
Councilmember Chandler?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Schwer?
Aye.
Mayor Notaro?
Aye. Resolution 2018-03 passes 7-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, a proclamation declaring March as Multiple Myeloma Month. This is in your packets, a description of the disease myeloma. Do I have a motion for the proclamation?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? We need a, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Resolution passes 7-0. Okay, the regular agenda is consideration of resolution 2018-04.
Yes, ma'am. This is a resolution of the city of Bel Air Beach authorizing one or more loans in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $1.6 million for the purpose of financing the cost of underground electrical, cable, and communications, and the installation of street lighting improvements on and adjacent to Bellevue Estates Island as described herein, approving the form of and the execution and delivery of one or more loan agreements related to such loans, authorizing the execution and delivery of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida Special Assessment Revenue Bonds, Series 2018A, parenthetical, Bellevue Estates Island Project, close paren, and the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida Taxable Special Assessment Revenue Bonds, Series 2018B, again, Bellevue Estates Island Project, to evidence the city's obligation under the loan agreement, providing that such bonds shall be limited obligations of the city payable solely from the non-ad valorem special assessment imposed against the real property throughout Bellevue Estates Island, authorizing the commencement of the proceedings in the Circuit Court of Pinellas County, Florida, to validate the authority of the city to issue such bonds, authorizing certain officials and employees of the city to take all actions required in connection with the sale, issuance, and delivery of such bonds, providing for certain other matters in connection with the making of such bonds and providing for effective date.
Thank you. We have a motion for resolution 2018-04.
So moved. Second.
This was sort of the end of Chris's presentation earlier. Do we have any questions or comments from council? Any questions from?
Thank you for one
Oh,
question.
sorry.
When we were talking about the 15%, now, how would that affect the bond at all? Or would it not?
So this bond resolution is set up to cap the amount that you can borrow at $1.6 million. If it became necessary to borrow additional funding because of cost overruns, you would adopt a supplemental resolution, supplement to this, which basically authorizes an additional borrowing up to the
Hopefully we won't have to, this will cover.
There'll be
construction, and I know what costs escalate all the time.
It's crazy. There will be a additional resolution somewhere in the process after the bond validation takes place, which describes the exact detail of the loan. Right now, the loan agreement and resolution set out the parameters for the borrowing, the not to exceed interest rate, the longest term over which the assessments can be repaid. It primarily serves as the basis for the judicial validation that I mentioned. This is what we'll validate. Once the validation is concluded, we will get the exact details as far as the loan and the interest rate worked out with the Florida League of Cities.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Chris, I do have a question. And this is more of a timing thing, I guess. I mean, right now, in the initial resolution, we have an estimated cost, and we're in the process of getting binding costs. So what is the connection between the actual issuance of the bond and receiving those binding costs?
Well, the bond issuance is liable to take probably 3 to 4 months because of the fact that we have to validate. Validation can be resolved within 90 days, typically within 90 days, including the 30-day appeal period. Generally, you wouldn't want to commit to the project until you have validated your authority to issue the bonds to finance it. So to the extent that there is a trigger with the utility company whereby you provide them with the estimate prepared by the engineering firm, they have a turnaround time during which they can give a binding cost estimate. You wouldn't make that submittal and start the meter running for the binding cost estimate until you've gotten through the validation. Because, again, we want to make sure that you have a legal authority to undertake the project before you go to that length.
Right, but is the intention that by the time you actually execute the agreement, you would have a binding cost as opposed to an estimate?
Not necessarily, because this sets out the maximum amount that you could borrow. If you got signals from the energy company that 1.6 is comfortably above, well above the actual cost that it will be, you may end up borrowing less, right? But you typically wouldn't have that. But I believe the estimate is generally they have a 6-month period within which to supply the binding cost estimate. You could get your loan set up, but not draw the entirety of the 1.6 million until you know exactly what the cost is going to be. And then to the extent that you borrowed more than you need to do the project, you use the residual to repay the loan, basically buy down the principal.
Anything else from council? Anything from the public? Annie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Croft,
Aye.
Councilmember Petrowski,
Aye.
Councilmember Baldwin,
Aye.
Councilmember Chandler,
Aye.
Councilmember Gunn,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Schreier,
Aye.
Mayor Notaro.
Aye. Resolution passes 7-0. Item 10, consideration of accepting the comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2017. Jean Bittinger, CPA, will present this to us.
Thank you, Mayor. It's a pleasure to be here. Since you have a very lengthy agenda, I will make this brief. This is the report for the year ended September 30th, 2017, and this is one of the earliest ones we've delivered. At the urging of your interim city manager, we got it for you, Lynn, and thank you very much to Melanie for her help. She did a lot of hard work and did a lot of extra work to get this out so quickly. This report, if you notice in the beginning, Roman numeral X, Roman numeral 10, the certificate of achievement is in there for last year's CAFR, which is a huge honor. That's the certificate that's awarded for excellence in financial reporting, and that comes from the Government Finance Officers Association. You have to meet a high level of the high standard to be able to get that award. So it's exciting that you got it last year. I believe this report will also win this award. Remembering this is an award that's out of Chicago, and so it's a national award, and your report is judged by 3 independent reviewers who have to be outside the state of Florida. That's part of the criteria for this, as well as GFOA staff. I'm just going to go over just a few of the highlights. The audit opinion, which you'll find on page 3. This is what's known as an unmodified opinion. This is the highest opinion that we can render. Directly after that comes management's discussion analysis, which is written by your city's finance director, and I recommend reading that. That gives you a good synopsis of what happened during the year. As far as a few of the financial highlights, page 24, you'll see the funds. I'm not going to go over the full accrual statements, which have all the debt and the assets, but really how you run the city of Bel Air Beach is on a modified accrual basis. So on page 24, you will see the general fund and your capital projects fund. The capital projects fund actually pays for a lot of your fixed assets, which is actually an ongoing battle with any municipality. You are responsible for a large number of assets, and you're constantly having to replace them. So you'll see the money coming out of the capital projects fund having been transferred from the general fund. So your overall, this year was tight. You did buy a lot of fixed assets. You are still repaying the debt for the city hall. So you actually had, between the two funds, if you look at the far right column, it says total, you actually had a net income, if you will, of $1,561. But you were in the black, so that's a good thing. Page 26. It shows you your budget actual, and looking at the variance, it shows that council passed a good budget and you were in compliance. You actually had a favorable variance on the revenue side
of $46,244. And a favorable variance also on the expenditure side, where you actually exceeded expectations and came in under budget by $80,510. So overall, it shows again that you passed a good budget and that staff did a good job of adhering to it. I don't know if there are any other questions anyone would like me to answer. I'd be happy to. Otherwise, I don't want to make a long meeting any longer.
You never find any problems. You know, I've been on the receiving end of audits before, and there's always something that's just amazing. I mean, it's just unusual.
This is unusual. The city has a very good staff, and you have a very experienced finance director, so you're very lucky in that regard.
Any other questions, comments?
No, just lots of thanks for Melanie.
Yes. Thank you. Do we have a motion to accept the CAFR for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2017?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's accepted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir.
Interrupt for just one moment to say I think we all should recognize Melanie for the fine job she did getting us through this audit as usual, with no exceptions. So Melanie, thank you very much.
Item 11, authorization to allow the city manager to execute an agreement with Brian Miller Olive as bond counsel for the Bellevue Estates Island Utility Underground Project. Then, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is a request to authorize retention of Brian Miller Olive as the bond counsel for the undergrounding project in the amount of $16,000, $15,000 for the retainage fee, and then $1,000 worth of expenses. Also, you'll find in this agreement, because we have used Brian Miller Olive for the petition process and the resolutions, you'll find in a memorandum with a waiver of potential conflicts, which is in the front of your pack. I recommend approval of this to move the project forward.
Any motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, comments?
Do we need a separate vote on approval on the waiver, disclosure and waiver issue? Or are we just going to combine the two together?
I think we can combine the two. We don't need a roll call on this, do we? All in favor of authorizing the city manager to enter into this agreement?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, number 12, consideration of resolution 2018-05.
Resolution of the City Council of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida, amending the provisions of Resolution 2016-01 pertaining to fees related to the community center, creating a fee schedule for use of parks and beach areas and establishing an effective date.
We have a motion for resolution 2018-05.
So moved.
Second? Second. Ned?
Yes, we have adjusted the rental fees for this building. Several years ago, I guess they raised them significantly. What I've asked to do is return them to the original rate because we've seen a decline in the rental of this facility. Also, we've had a lot of requests for use of Morgan Park for weddings and things of that nature. And what this does from non-residents, this requires a permit with a cost of $100 for that, and a cleanup fee also imposed. Residents will still have to get a permit, but there won't be any fees charged to them other than possibly a cleanup fee if they didn't clean up the beach after they used it. But I recommend approval of this resolution to update those fees.
Questions? Didn't we discuss for use of the beach weddings of not allowing commercial? Is that reflected in here, or is that
It's in here. You can't use it for commercial or political.
You passed an ordinance earlier that said it can't be used for commercial, but an individual could come to us and ask to use the beach, but they would pay a fee of $100 and then pay a cleanup fee, which is non-refundable of $100 for a 4-hour period, not for all day.
And Lynn, I spoke with you earlier today regarding 2, number 1, but 2, number 4, with the residents, where it says reserve the use of the pavilion and picnic table at Morgan Park. Is that a necessity? Are we finding that, I mean, and how does that get enforced?
Well, we would require a permit. So a resident currently right now can come to City Hall and ask us to reserve the shelter all day.
Oh, the whole
So,
shelter, okay.
The whole shelter. So what we're doing here basically is making it more of a permit process, so there is something posted there that says a resident, Bill Jones, has asked for use of the picnic shelter for this date. So we're going to actually know who's using it when they want to reserve it. Outside of that, it's first come, first served.
Lynn, I had a question. Have you checked the current rate against similar facilities in the area? And how do we stand, not the proposed new lower rate, but the current rate? How does that compare to other similar facilities?
I looked at a few of the rates, but realistically, it's very hard to compare what is here to a hotel. It's a full-service thing like the Sheraton Sand Key. That's very hard to do that because we don't set up the tables and chairs. We basically set them out, and the renter sets the tables up. As an example, this weekend we had a wedding outside. They paid for the use of the chairs, but they took them out and brought them back in. So it's kind of a different way to look at the rental process as opposed to what you would do at possibly a private country club or the Sheraton Sand Key, where the staff actually puts the tables up, they put the tablecloths on, and a lot of times the silverware and all the decorations. And if they had a wedding on the beach, they would put all those chairs up too.
Yeah, I was just curious. I mean, one of the reasons that we raised it was because we thought it was lower. It was also, I mean, we were getting a lot of use, which is good from a revenue standpoint. It was taxing the staff to keep up with all of that. And it was also, you know, there was a lot of wear and tear to the facility, mostly because, and most of those were non-residents. So, I mean, that's what I recall before. I mean, I'm not necessarily against bringing it down for, you know, I don't, how does the business stand today versus when we had it at a lower rate?
Very slow today. Since the rate's been raised, and Patty can answer that probably better than me, but we have had a lot less rentals since the rate has been raised. Right, Patty?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I mean, one of the concerns, as I said, was, you know, with a lot of use, and I know there was a wedding last weekend, and there was blood and some other stuff after that event. But, I mean, this is for our community. Most of the people that use it are not from this community. So I think there needs to be a balance.
Well, I think the higher fee does create that balance, and they pay a non-refundable cleaning, and if there's any damage, they also have that deposit that we can take some of that back, which in most cases it goes back because they don't have damage. But we do charge them in case if, as an example, if we had to do more cleaning than normal, we would take some of that fee from that and charge that to them. But as an example, the cleanup today was pretty minimal. Staff had it cleaned up in less than 2 hours this morning. So,
Was it $1,800? How does that compare to what we have now?
it's $2,300 right now, and right now we have few to none in reservations.
So we're looking at $500.
Right.
What was it before we raised it? Like, was it
It was
1,800?
1,800.
So we're just restoring it to what it was.
All I'm asking to do is restore it, and hopefully, previous to that, we had a lot of reservations. And unfortunately, when, there's a price point in everything. And we evidently found it, so and I think we have a great facility here. There's a lot of opportunity to use it. I think it's a benefit to the city, and they're here anyway.
But the one thing we're not reversing is the $200 non-refundable.
No, we're not reversing any of that. That was something that there isn't the non-refundable for cleaning, and there's a $200 damage deposit, which is an example. After we look at it, after staff looks at it and gets it cleaned up, if there's any additional damages or cleaning that we need to do over and above what we would normally do, then they're going to be charged for that.
Lynn, do we know what Clearwater Beach gets? Because, well, besides the sailing center, I know that they have weddings there, and they are also right on the water. Do we know? Because that's pretty comparable with us.
Yeah, I'm not, but they also have catering activity into there, which we don't. We let them bring their own caterer. So you're really trying to look at apples and oranges because it's a different situation. We don't have any catering service. We don't provide setup. We just basically put a dance floor in the middle, bring out, like this weekend, I think it was 13 tables and 87 chairs. We did the white chairs in the back. They set them up outside. They brought them back inside, put them on the rack. And this morning when we came in, the chairs were stacked as we left them stacked on Friday, and the tables were sitting spread throughout the room. And we picked them up and put them back.
Any other questions, comments? Any questions or comments from the public? Can you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Baldwin.
Aye.
Councilmember Chandler.
Aye.
Councilmember Gunn. Aye. Councilmember Crop.
Aye.
Councilmember Petrowski.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Schwer.
Aye.
Mayor Notera.
Aye. Resolution passes 7-0. Item 13, consideration of resolution 2018-06.
Yes, ma'am, this is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida, opposing offshore oil drilling and exploration activities and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. This resolution arose from a Big C presentation we had last month where, I assume you all know that they are want to open up the entire Gulf Coast to offshore drilling and so on. And there's going to be, if they do, could be a serious impact on our economy, on our beaches and all that. So all of the Big C communities are passing similar resolutions, and they will be forwarded together to Tallahassee and to Washington, the people who have power over this. So that's the reason for this resolution. Do I have a motion for 2018-06?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Mayor, didn't I attended that meeting as well, as you know. Didn't they have an email address that everyday people can just email? I know Hunter gave the presentation, but
I've got Hunter's address or email here.
well, maybe we can get it
Yes.
so that it can go on the website.
Yes. Yes, so if anyone wants to make comments on their own. Any other questions, comments? Anything from the audience? Annie?
Councilmember Chandler.
Aye.
Councilmember Gunn.
Aye.
Councilmember Crop.
Aye.
Councilmember Petrowski.
Aye.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Schwer.
Aye.
Mayor Notera.
Aye. Resolution passes 7-0. Number 14, review of proposed 10-year plan for city capital improvement projects. Rob?
All right. The reason that I put this in here, I'm also on the city manager search committee, and during the course of all of these interviews, there have been a lot of questions about, the city's plan going forward, or just some detail about that. This is something that I put together back in 2016 when I was mayor. I brought that to one of the meetings, and there was some interest from council members actually about this, and so I said, well, I'll bring it forward again. But, it's not meant as anything other than that. This is really proposed improvements against existing funding over a 10-year period, showing potential offsets for revenue from grants. So I won't say any more about it. It wasn't meant for that, Dr. Ward, but it's just something that this, I think, is a good tool that could be used for the city. It does lay out all the needed infrastructure improvements, whether they're stormwater or streets or seawalls. I mean, all the things that really are critical to the city. And whether you use this or something else doesn't really matter to me. So that's
something just to keep in the back of our minds and consider. Any questions?
I was just thinking, when we had the engineer do the review of our stormwater and the stormwater improvements, weren't we estimating something like 3.5 million for that?
Yes, Vice Mayor.
Over how many years were we looking for that?
Well, it's set up in the capital budget annually over the first 6 years, and then it's got a big number in the 7th year, which as we go out in the out years, we keep putting money forward to that. So we keep moving the project forward. As an example, this year we have First Street in it, and we're doing some work on the Belle Isle intersection.
And Wanda, the reason that has a lower number in there, I mean, when that came out, the dual report, I went through it, some of our engineers went through it, and I think that number was overstated, and I think it can be done for a lot less, just my opinion.
Rob, selective replacement, street lighting, can you elaborate on that?
Well, at the time, the city was going through some added streetlights. There were probably, 8 or 9 streets, middle streets that really didn't have any street lighting or it was inadequate. So this, during that period, we added, a dozen streetlights, maybe not that many. But so all the streets that didn't have streetlights at that time or it was inadequate, those were added. So that was the intention of that line item. Again, these are not current, so I'm not really proposing that this is something that was done 2 years ago. This is really just more of a tool.
Anything else? Okay. Number 15, discussion of proposal to charge staff time and materials to Bellevue Islands Estate Ad Hoc Committee on Undergrounding. John?
I was just thinking that, any costs that go to or for undergrounding should be charged to that area, which is fair for the rest of the city.
As I understand.
No.
Excuse me, sir.
We pay taxes. We expect to put something out of you in a city hall.
Sir, as I understand it, the costs, and correct me if I'm wrong, like the cost of getting the binding estimate, the costs of attorney's fees and such like things like that will be will be rolled into the amount. Is that correct?
Yes, the staff time, and I've stated it, is really, in the scheme of things, it's negligible. I mean, yes, we spend some hours doing it, but over the time frame, realistically, staff is being paid by the city, by the residents, and I think it's a negligible cost to worry about our time and passing it on.
It would probably end up costing more to track the time and charge it back than it will be just to absorb it.
Well, if it was a significant amount, that would be one thing, but also too, since this is a pilot program, if you will, for possibility of, or likelihood of other areas doing it, when staff's doing it, it won't take as much time to 2nd Street, it won't take as much time to 3rd Street. So it wouldn't be fair really to charge them, to charge the first group an amount, because it wouldn't take as much time to do the 2nd group, the 3rd group, and so on.
Good point. Any other? Okay. John, anything else?
That's fine.
Okay. Number 16, consideration of request to change waste management recycle pickup schedule.
Mayor and Council, we received a request from Waste Management to change the recycling pickup day from Friday to Wednesday. And this would happen sometime in June. Mr. Bill Gresham is here. And Bill, if you'd like to come forward, and he's from Waste Management.
Bill Gresham, Waste Management. Given the request, what we're trying to do in the county is put all our recycling collections on one day, on Wednesday. We're trying to make an emphasis on recycling to the public, and when we do that, we hopefully will increase the education. The recycling market is not at a very good point now because of the China Sword. The China Sword was introduced January 1st. And China is the largest consumer of the recycled material in North America. Just in 2016 alone, they took 13 million tons of paper and 800,000 tons of plastic. Well, they announced imposing some serious limitations on their restrictions on their material and their contamination. They have officially banned all mixed paper and mixed plastic, and they reduced the contamination rate per bale to 0.3%. Now that officially should render all recovered materials ineligible to be sent to China, because I don't think any facility will be able to do 0.3%. But, you know, everybody's got to give it their best effort to do it. And besides that, just in the marketplace, the value of recycling material in the marketplace has dropped because newspapers are not as big or in demand of the product anymore. And glass, the competition for glass is sand, so that makes it pretty tough. And when you pick up glass, a lot of it breaks and then it contaminates the other recycling material. So we're trying to counteract all that with a concentrated effort on recycling, have a recycling day, basically countywide, which will be a Wednesday, and to just stress the choices that the residents need to make on the products. Because even the state of Florida, the DEP has started a new program. It's called Rethink, Reset, and Recycle. Everybody needs to rethink what they're putting in there, reset their minds on the different products. So at least we can have some products in there that have a market value. And hopefully, starting Wednesday, first Wednesday in June, we'll get everybody recycling often and recycling right. That was the reason we made that request. And we have countywide and then 5 municipalities.
Questions?
What if Bel Air Shore was to vote, I'm just curious, if Bel Air Shore voted no and we voted, we voted no and Bel Air Shore votes yes. It's all off of Gulf Boulevard. How do you handle something like that?
Okay, that's not one of our cities.
Bel Air Shore?
Yeah.
Waste Pro, I believe.
I don't know who they use, but in so far our cities, we've gotten pretty much everybody's ready to go in and do it. If not, one of the biggest ones was Pinellas Park, so they're going to vote on it sometime in April. But if Pinellas Park does not do it, we won't be able to do it countywide, because it's all a matter of our trucks, being able to utilize our trucks correctly. You know, to get them all doing it on Wednesday means we can do it for everybody. If those designated trucks cannot change or will not change, then I'll have to come back here in April and say, we tried. We tried.
Will Waste Management be sending out notices to all the residents saying, you know, we changed the day?
Yes, we will notify every resident, probably by mail, but we'll also, if we can work it out, put it on your website. Just do as many newspaper, as many ways as possible to notify them. And that's why we're here so early. We want to get our notifications set up, get them done, get them approved by the city to see what, make sure it makes your approval to go to your residents, and go from there and have plenty of time to get everybody set and ready.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? No? Do I have a motion to approve the change for the recycle pickup schedule?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Thank you very much.
Number 17, consideration of removal of landscaped cul-de-sac on Harrison Avenue. Lynn.
Yes, Mayor and Council, we had a resident, Mr. Motz, came to us a few months ago and asked about removal of the turnaround on Harrison Avenue. At that time, I provided Mr. Motz with a petition and asked him to reach out to everyone from the bridge on Harrison east. The petition is enclosed here. He obtained 11 petitions, signatures in favor of it, and he's also stated that 2 were not in favor of it. And what this has created is some issues with turning around in that cul-de-sac. There's 2 palm trees there, a curved circle with some shell in it. We would have to obtain a cost and develop that and put it in the budget. So it's you know, I'll come back to you with whatever that cost might be. But I'm recommending, and there's some pictures and that Mr. Motz has provided us.
How would that affect a truck going in there and turning around? I mean, because all you're doing is, you know, you're not setting a wider street, you're just having them not being able to turn that ratio. You know.
Well, there's the turnaround, and I have a big pickup truck, and the turnaround in that mine pickup there's a couple cul-de-sacs that is a problem. And you may catch your tire rolling over it. So taking it out, you're not going to have that.
Still not going to be able to make a full turn. You're
No,
gonna have to
no.
back up.
No, not if it's a big truck, like what Mr. Motz had explained to us before. There was evidently a truck with a trailer that was delivering a car, and he kind of ended up in his driveway.
Kind of car.
That I don't know, I wasn't there. But, you know, another option is, at the bridge, is also, if we take out this cul-de-sac, is basically put up a sign before the bridge that says, or maybe it, probably to be safer, it would be better at Hibiscus and Harrison.
So they can turn down.
So to tell them that there's no large truck turnaround at the end of the street.
And Lynn, I went out there and took a look and actually measured, the turning radiuses, and it really doesn't meet the turning radiuses, and the island only makes it worse, for fire trucks or for waste management or for whatever. So it really is an obstruction. It should be removed.
Yeah, actually, the little circle there used to be where the basketball hoop used to sit for the basketball games in that cul-de-sac.
As it is, the concrete for the rim of the planter area there just gets destroyed constantly, so my preference would be to not have it there.
When I was out looking at it, well, I walk my dog down there frequently, but when I was looking at it today, I came up with the idea of, well, why would anybody not want it removed? And then I thought, well, because they might think it's pretty with the two trees and the whatnot, but then a possibility maybe for council to consider, or the residents that live in that area, is instead of painting when it's gone, making a circle with maybe a design like a compass rose or an anchor or something nautical, because we're a beach community, but the same level as the street. Something like pavers would be up, and those, if the trucks are going on them and those big trucks, they get cracked and broken, and then that would be an issue. So I thought it could still be a beautiful cul-de-sac with some sort of painted or embossed design of a compass or an anchor or something like that. That's what I was thinking.
So we'll take, if you approve this, we'll take a look at some options and come back to you with.
I mean, as a resident, I'm actually, I think that I have an opportunity to say something, and that is, this, first thing is, cul-de-sacs there are gone. It doesn't change the fact the truck cannot turn around. And if you go down any of the other cul-de-sacs, Alita, Donato, you'll notice that the houses have chains across their driveway. Because what people do, they just pull right in the driveway. So this turn radius is an issue on every one of the cul-de-sacs. We happen to have a landscape island. The thing is, we're trying to beautify the city. Why would we start taking landscaping away? And then that's the first thing. Secondly, this so-called signature sheet, no one really knew what they were signing. I've had a couple of people approach me and go, I signed it because he wouldn't leave me alone. He approached my house 5 times before I finally said, no, look, I'm not interested in signing that. I think we should try some other things first, such as putting proper signage at the street. There are standard DOT signs that say there's no truck access on this road. If you're delivering product, typically a delivery truck will know how to maneuver. They back out, they figure out a way to make it happen, and they don't get in the cul-de-sac. It's that one car delivery guy that made a mess, and yes, he's got a scratch in his driveway. But, there are other residents on the street, and I think you need an official petition so they really understand what they're signing, because people didn't know what they were signing before you consider removing and charging the city a big expense to repave the road. I mean, it's not going to be as simple, you just take the palm trees down.
Well,
So I would just say we should reconsider that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, regardless of the petition, the island, I mean, there are standards for residential cul-de-sacs, which is what it is, and putting an island in the middle of that doesn't meet the FDOT standards either. So really, it's more of a safety issue, I would think. If you get a fire truck in there, you want them to be able to get around that as quickly as possible.
In the pictures, this driveway really was messed up.
Have we talked to fire department to see what their opinion is? Any life safety issues? Have there ever been any, and have we spoken to them about it?
I just had our civil engineers review the turning radiuses of fire trucks based on that island.
But half of our streets don't meet those requirements.
We might have to address those in the future.
Yeah.
The only way to fix it is to take their front yard, and you can't do that. So.
Someone back there wanted to speak? Yeah. Name and address and up to the mic, please.
Leckie. We have the properties at 217 and 218 Harrison Avenue. I've lived on that Harrison Avenue since 1986. While I do notice that the street is narrow, it is difficult to turn around. I don't think that removing that island is going to make it any easier, nor is it going to eliminate people from, as my neighbor Bruno Matz has experienced, I don't think it's going to eliminate people from pulling in driveways. And I agree with Jody, who said we're trying to beautify the city, so why take stuff out? Now our neighbor Bruno is right, we're all three of us at the end. I don't think it's going to make a difference.
Thank you for your input.
Back in here.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Glenn. Quick.
Glenn Gunn, 2215 Donato. I can't say I'm really up to speed on this issue, but this whole undergrounding thing has really brought to light a shift in the mindset and the thinking of how we got to do things, so far as the lines go of equal benefits and apportionments go. Now, if you tell me that the cost of doing this is negligible, I'm going to sit back down. But if it is an expensive issue, then my question is, if it's a safety issue, I'll sit back down again. But unless you can say definitely it's a safety issue and the costs are negligible, then I have to ask who benefits from this and who pays for it.
Someone back there, Mr. Matt?
Bruno Matz, 216 Harrison Avenue. Well, I can tell you who benefits me, okay? My personal property should not have a truck on it. Now, I've lived on it for 19 years. Over the years, it has been a problem, yes. Trailers and trucks do back into my driveway, but they generally don't cause damage. But I got upset this time when I got damage to my driveway, and I felt it's the city's responsibility to protect my property so that this doesn't happen. Putting a chain across my driveway is not an option, and it should not be an option. And furthermore, I agree with Mr. Baldwin. I mean, this cul-de-sac does not meet the standards, and the island should be removed. And another issue, I did not talk to you 4 times. I talked to you once, and I talked to your husband once, okay? So let's get that straight. And the other thing is, sorry, I personally talked to two of the drivers that pick up the trash, and both of them assured me that if that island was not there, they could turn their wheels and back up once and make that turn, not 5, 6, or 7 times like it takes now. So I think it is a safety issue, and I think my property is also worth it to have this island removed. Thank you, Council.
Mayor, Council, what we'll do, just, we can check all those issues about the turning radius and that in the cost evaluation. And that way, we'll bring something back to you that you can make a decision. I just need some consensus that you want me to do that or not do that.
I think we should look into it more. Then I call the fire department like we did one time when we were talking about on-street parking, and the fire trucks couldn't get through. So let's call the fire trucks and. Excuse me. Yes.
My husband and I are 217, 218 Harrison Avenue, and we do not want to see that removed. If we love Bruno and Krista, they're awesome neighbors. If we felt like it would solve the problem, we would support it 100%, but it looks much better with it there. There's no way it's gonna solve the problem. My husband and I rode our bikes all through Bel Air Beach, looking at all of the different streets. All the cul-de-sacs are very narrow. Taking that out is not gonna make it any easier for anybody, and it's gonna cause more problems. So I think if you're gonna consider doing it, you need to consider doing it all throughout Bel Air Beach, because it's not fair to take it off our street like you're taking off all of the streets. So again, we support Bruno as a person, but all it's gonna do is make the problem worse, and how you can tell that is if you go down some of the streets that don't have it, neighbors have to put chains across their driveway or people are gonna pull right in them. So we don't like people pulling in our driveway, they do it all the time as well. But again, that taking the cul-de-sac center island thing out isn't gonna fix that. They're still gonna pull in our driveway, and if anything, probably pull in our driveway more. Because when you come down the street now, with that island there, it forces you to go to the very exterior of the circle. And as people come down the street, if that were gone, they're gonna drive more straight, and if anything, pull into our driveway at 217 and then back up into Bruno's driveway, doing what they're doing right now. And we have a lot of that, so I'm not looking to solve, his problem by making it our problem. We all have that problem. The street's not set up for big vehicles to come down, so I think the way to fix it is putting the sign down at the end of the street and trying to avoid the big trucks, because it is tight. But go drive around Bel Air Beach, look at all of those cul-de-sacs, and they're all really tight. So unless you're gonna rip out the center islands out of all of them, it wouldn't be fair to take it just out of ours. So when you're looking at the cost, make sure you look at it doing it all throughout Bel Air Beach.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will get some more information on this before we do. Okay, item 18, approval of Hurricane Irma expenses.
Yes, Mayor and Council, we set up a fund out of our hurricane fund of an estimate of $120,000 for expenses. And what I've provided you have approved some of these previously, but this is a current, up-to-date expense report of what expenses we've incurred. The only thing left is a couple of stumps. One of them was out here that they had to remove. We haven't got that cost yet back from them. And there was a stump across the street that fell at the stormwater pond. That stump was removed just before Christmas. They're very slow at getting us invoices. But we've submitted everything except the stump invoices to FEMA. And we expect to get, depending on varying degrees, between 70 and 100% of this money back from FEMA. The last thing we have to do is the stumps. We have already repaired the Public Works house, and that's been taken care of also. So all the damages, for the most part for us, were debris, really, other than the house. And a couple stumps fell, or a couple big trees fell. There is some damage on the concrete barrier going across the little bridge here on the causeway. The county is aware of that, and they will repair that, but that's not, because it's their bridge. So what I'm asking tonight is your approval of the expenses to date of $113,592.76.
Do I have a motion to approve these expenses?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Discussions, comments, questions?
Why do we have 10-4, 10-12, 10-16, and again 10-4? All those different lines for replacing and damaging street signs.
Yeah, what we had to do, we had to buy the materials, and then because of the size of our staff to get them up faster, we had to buy the posts, we bought the signs, and then we hired someone to install the street signs.
Okay, so instead of one line item,
Right.
it's easier. Okay.
It's several to do invoices, just like the vegetative debris. There's invoices for vegetative debris removal from 9:27 to 9:30, and then there's 10:2 to 10:9, where we picked up all the debris within the city.
Okay, and this may be a dumb question, and I apologize if it is. A tipping fee?
Yes.
What is that?
If you take something to the dump, you have to pay a fee. to
Oh,
dump.
and that's what
That's
it's
what
called,
the tipping
tipping
fee is.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Yep. Sir?
I just want to add to that.
Come up and use the microphone, sir.
Mine? Okay.
No, use the microphone.
I just want to thank Lynn for going into this. I just wanted to ask, say something about Indian Rocks. They've already gotten some grant already, and they're waiting FEMA grant now, which they've been approved for. So we're a little behind, and it's need to catch up to them.
Thank you. Do we have approval for the hurricane expenses? Have you motion? Get a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? They're approved. Okay. Authorization to execute a contract for website design and hosting. Lynn?
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is for us to have a new website built and take it off our current server. Currently, our website is connected to the server for City Hall, which bogs down the system. Also in the process, we'll be updating that server. And the website, based on the information we've gotten from the Digital Deal and some other companies that we talked to, our website's been hacked over 100 times. And it's, we don't need it put on our city server where our financial information and things like that. So what we're proposing to do is build a new website. It's more user-friendly, gives us a better opportunity for, as an example, residents looking for the minutes for the park board. You'll be able to go to a button that says park board, and there'll be minutes under there. Rather than to say minutes and agendas, and you gotta scroll down for miles, I guess. But what I'm asking for in the amount of $6,463.40. I did have the city attorney have a discussion with Digital Deal about the contract, and I think we've resolved those issues.
Do we have a motion to
I have a
authorize?
question. That's the setup fee, and then the annual fee is the $263
Yes,
on an
ma'am.
ongoing basis?
Yes,
Okay.
that's the hosting fee.
Okay.
And we'll still be putting stuff on the website. They're gonna do the design for us. Basically, they'll be designing the template for us for the city.
So
With our
that's a
approval.
one-time design fee?
Right.
Mayor, I had a pleasure of speaking to Steve Schwab, the owner of this company. And he showed me how to go in the back door of your website and see how many renegade, illegal renegade, I don't know what the word is, activities that are back there selling products under the City of Bel Air Beach banner that you don't see. But if you ask for City of Bel Air Beach, if you go deep enough into the Google list, you'll find these folks. This company will eliminate all of that has been going on in the background.
And Digital Deal hosts the website for the Big C, and I know Big C,
some other
cities as well.
Yeah, they do.
So we going after all those people that are illegally using our banner?
He'll cut them off, is what he'll do. He'll cut this one completely, so he'll protect through the various software protection devices he has to make sure that it doesn't happen, which doesn't exist now.
We have a motion to authorize execution of a contract with, for website design and hosting with Digital Deal.
So moved.
Second.
Any other questions?
No, we'll be responsible for entry and updating all of the content. They're not going to do any content update for us.
They'll help us initially. They'll just transfer some of the page stuff that we have, but we'll still be responsible for.
Transfer and reorganization and the training on the new organization. That's the hard part.
Right now, the website we have was, to my understanding, was basically created internally. And because it's on our server, as an example, if you send me an email, it takes 15 to 20 minutes to get to me because the website is part of that bog down. So if you're calling me on the phone and said I just sent you something, call back in about 15 and you'll...
So is the whole staff going through training and a few people?
We'll make sure we have enough staff. So as an example, if Patty gets sick and somebody else knows how to do it. That's the goal, to have multiple people trained on it. So we can keep it more up to date and have a more user-friendly website.
Okay, any other questions? We have a motion to authorize the execution of the contract for website design. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes. Discussion of city manager selection advisory committee's recommendation to the city council and city council members and candidates. Selection of city manager by ballot and authorization for the mayor to negotiate and execute a contract with the city manager selected. I served as the chairman of the ad hoc committee I served as chairman of the ad hoc committee for the selection of a city manager, along with 2 other council members and 3 residents. We started out with over 40 resumes and applications. We narrowed it down. We asked the applicants for written responses to certain questions. We got those. We narrowed it down some more. We did telephone interviews with them. We narrowed it down some more, and we ended up narrowing it down to 4 candidates. And we provided all the council members with the applications and all the documentation and so on those people. One of those people is withdrawn from consideration, so now we have 3 people who are still under consideration. And they are Terry Henley, Brian King, and Lynn Reeves. I wanted to give each of them an opportunity to, say maybe 5 minutes worth of what they'd like to tell the city council before we vote on who we might want to select. So, Terry Henley. Do this in alphabetical order.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Terry Henley. Good evening. City of Bel Air Beach. For those who don't know me, I'm your city manager candidate. And the process has been about a month, 2 months, and at this point, just about everyone's qualified. Now it comes down to, what's your vision, what do you want, and who do you think can lead your city? Or, as this legislative body is, who do you want as your executive, implementing your policies for the next, hopefully, a long time, many years. Now, what I currently do is, I manage a budget of $193 million in Southeast Florida. I also have state experience in government with the Florida Department of Transportation. I know you have a lot of traffic concerns and revenue opportunities I want to discuss in just a minute. I also have local government experience in the city of North Miami, and I also worked in Martin County, so local government experience with the city, a county, and a state. I also have private sector experience working for Duke Energy. I was a contractor there in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I also worked in traffic there. I managed parking facilities, and I was contracted for the city of Charlotte, managing their parking department. Now, what I've learned about the city of Bel Air Beach is you guys are correct. It's very unique. There aren't a lot of places like this. It's a premier city, and all of you should be very proud of that. Why is it a premier city? Because it's comprised mostly of residential. That's a terrific quality, and it's what makes you unique. However, the problem or the shortcoming is that you're completely dependent on your property taxes. I checked with the property appraiser, and there's 1,300 properties in Bel Air Beach. And of those 1,300, the average taxable value, which you pay on your taxes, is $400,000. And out of that $400,000, this is the average property, a millage rate of 2, that generates approximately about $800 a year. Now, it's a very low millage rate, but you're not the only taxing authority on the tax bill. There's also fire, there's county, and there's others. So I believe that out of that millage rate of 2, and you're generating about $1 million. Now, your reoccurring revenue is $2 million. So that makes you, that's 50% of the revenue source. Now, what I would bring to the table, and along with your priorities with code and streets and infrastructure and public safety, is revenue diversification. Now, I met with the finance director on Friday, and we have tremendous staff, and I want to thank the staff for meeting with me, and I'd very much like to be part of this team. I met with the finance director on Friday, and I learned that there's also a very healthy fund balance, and that's terrific. Congratulations. A healthy city should have at least 20%, or 17% to be specific. That's 2 months of your operations. And the city of Bel Air Beach has about 7 times more than that. Now, that means you're prepared for a disaster, but it also means that you have a lot of backed up money that should be going into investment. And I see that one of the council members also proposed a plan, put that out there, and that's tremendous. A CIP, a capital improvement program, is something that I would bring to the table. And the city can't be just concerned about some street repairs this year. It needs to be concerned about the entire infrastructure and a comprehensive approach for 5, 10, 15, 30 years from now. Seawall level, or sea levels and sea level rise, that's something that we should all be concerned about. But what about a more pressing issue is your financial picture 5, 10, 15 years from now if you're only dependent upon property taxes because you don't have commercial. So what I would bring to the table is a comprehensive financial approach. We would look at revenue diversification and intergovernmental revenue. You want someone that's going to represent you at the county when you're competing for state dollars, and this is where my transportation and FDOT experience comes to the table, and my county level experience. You're going to want someone that comes to the table when you're doing it at the county and the state that says, hey, these are the projects that we have. They're already scoped and they're ready to go. And well, in 2008, did we get any grant money when the stimulus package came out? I'm not sure, but if you look at the environmental, and when I say environment, I say economic landscape right now, not just in Bel Air Beach, but look at the region and look at the state and at the federal level, there's going to be another stimulus package. And if you don't have a diverse revenue portfolio, you're only dependent on the property taxes, then at least I hope that the city's going to be prepared and have a competitive advantage against the other cities when it comes to applying for those grants. Because it's not just if you have your hand out, it's you have to do your due diligence, know your material, and be prepared. So, with that, I want to thank every single member of the council. I want to thank the committee who invited me to speak, and I appreciate your hospitality and your consideration to be your executive CEO. Thank you.
Mr. King, I don't believe he's here. I met with him this afternoon, and his son had a baseball game tonight. So that, I think, is why he's not here. Lynn.
Mayor and Council, I would first say that I have a vested interest in the city. I've lived here for almost 20 years. I believe I understand the issues and problems. I have a great background as far as grant submission, and I've obtained in my previous position over $11 million from various agencies, to include FDOT, DEP, the SwiftMud, our local water control agency. And I prepared those grants. And actually, the last 2 grants that this city got, I prepared them for the playground and at Morgan Park and the picnic shelter. I also, the tennis court renovation. And I believe, to my knowledge, that was the last 2 grants the city received successfully or applied for. I believe I have the background. I've been in local government for over 18 years. I worked in very different projects, such as the construction of trails, construction of stormwater utilities, and in the last year, I've done the seawalls here. One of the 2 seawalls that are in great repair, need of repair. I also did a stormwater project on 2nd Street with a new application with a control check valve to try to prevent the flooding, and we're moving forward with 1st Street. I believe I am fully qualified as a certified floodplain manager for the community rating system, which right now we get 20% from our flood insurance discount. And I believe all of those things are based on the job description that was put out and advertised. I believe I feel that I meet all those qualifications, but as I have the experience in education. And I look forward, if I'm successful in becoming the city manager, I look forward with working with the residents, which I've done with the undergrounding project in great detail, through the hurricane debris pickup and things of that nature, that we worked very hard in getting that collected. We were one of the few cities that was completely completed in October as far as the debris pickup. The rest of the county, they were still picking stuff up in November. So I believe I'm very qualified, and I think I would be successful. As far as budgets, I've done my previous position. My operating budget was over $4 million annually. I had capital budgets $2 to $3 million on top of that. So creating budgets and performing in that way, I think I would provide an asset to the city. And I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Patty has prepared written ballots for the council members to vote on their selection for the city manager position. I think she's going to hand those out. She's going to take Mitch off the speakerphone so she can get his vote. And then she will...
I'm curious how you're going to do that.
Pardon?
I was kind of curious how you're going to work.
We discussed this. Thank you. We're doing a ranking 1, 2, 3, or just checking? No, just voting for one.
Mitch vote.
Pardon?
Mitch.
Yes, Mitch voted, but he gave his vote to Patty. Took her off the speakerphone.
Councilmember Crock?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure you're there.
Okay, Patty will read the ballots.
Councilmember Petrowski voted for Mr. Reeves. Councilmember Chandler voted for Mr. Reeves. Mayor Notaro voted for Mr. Reeves. Vice Mayor Schwer voted for Mr. Reeves. Councilmember Gunn voted for Mr. Henley. Councilmember Baldwin voted for Mr. Reeves. And Councilmember Crock voted for Mr. Reeves.
Congratulations, Lynn.
Thank you.
Thank you we thank all the applicants. Mr. Henley, thank you for being here today. Yes?
Can I just say something? Yes, I voted for Lynn Reeves, but I do want to say I struggled a little bit. I know that Lynn does a fabulous job, but I was impressed with Mr. Henley. So, for whatever that's worth, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much.
I had originally prepared a form contract that I used with Nancy Gonzalez, and also I'm prepared to have for your consideration there, the body here, a contract with the city manager.
Yeah,
For
okay.
consideration, and you can work that out with him,
Right.
and I'll get it over to you.
Okay, sounds good. We can work on that. Thank you. Mayor and council comments. Where do you want to start? Rob?
I was just going to mention that Lynn and I did meet with Luis Ortiz, who's an executive with Duke Energy, on Friday. We had a productive meeting, I think, and the whole goal was try to encourage him to get the numbers back quicker and try to get as much of a credit as we can for the project. So, and be happy to share that. He also offered that he'd be happy to speak with the underground committee. That's all I got.
Pam? What about Mitch? Oh, Mitch, any comments?
Yeah, just to thank Melanie for a great job again with the annual financial report, and congratulations to Lynn.
John?
Question, do we ever decide on the sign up front? What we were going to do with it?
Oh, the one in front of City Hall?
Correct.
No, I don't know that we have. We're looking into getting an electric sign or...
I got some information back from the original sign company, and they give me a couple designs. And what I would propose is ask the mayor to go to the Big C and say, this is a county road.
Give us a sign.
Let's try using the Gulf Boulevard beautification. So I think that's
on Causeway is a county road.
yeah. So what is it? 500 feet to City Hall. Maybe we can get some funding.
Some of their money, yes.
Right.
Good, I will do that.
Also, one other question. I don't know who we talked to. I guess it's the county, but are they ever going to replace any of the lights on the bridge that got knocked down from the storm? Or are they going to wait for the next one?
Well, I've heard two theories on that. I've heard that they took all the lights off of the Bel Air Bluff side because they made some type of effort that they didn't want them. But I need to dig further into that. I've just heard that in the last couple days, so we need to find out what they are going to do or not. So it kind of looks funny where you come up one side of the bridge and there's no lights, and then you come to our side and they've repaired ours, but we'll have to look into that further.
Jules?
Yes. I would like council to consider removing that island where the crosswalk is, the one closest north of the light, closest to the light, especially when we have spring break traffic. You can't, even if you're going straight, get around the cars that are trying to make a left turn because they're jockeyed right by that island. I mean, keeping the crosswalk there is, of course, but the island, the curb, the whole thing that cars cannot get around. I'm hearing tons, and not only from Bel Air Beach residents, but Bel Air Shore and Sand Key, and it's anybody that uses that road, it's a big, big issue, that particular one. So,
We'll look into that.
My turn? Yeah. Oh. I just wanted to note that this is sort of a red letter day for the City of Bel Air Beach. 2 ad hoc committees came to a successful conclusion tonight, and even being a member of the undergrounding committee, I want to thank everybody who was involved in that, and I think we should all be very happy with the conclusion that we've reached tonight. And the city manager ad hoc committee brought us some wonderful applicants, and it was very nice to be able to meet them and talk to them today. And another successful conclusion, so congratulations all around. Shoot off some fireworks. And while we're talking about crosswalks, coming up or down Bel Air Beach, either way, the crosswalk, I mentioned this to Deputy Vaughn the other night, the reflectors are almost useless. And the trees are only shadows that you're approaching in the dark. The Sanibel lights light the street, but you really can't see the trees. We need better reflectors or something that lights up the trees in the dark. I'm surprised we haven't had more people run into the trees there.
Anything else?
I think I'm done.
Okay. Like for sign issues. You may remember a couple months ago, somebody came from the county to give us a talk about the Complete Streets project, and they sort of said that we were going to get those message signs, one on the south side of town and one on the north side of town saying, you know, X miles here, travel time, that. It was sort of presented to us as a given. Well, I was at a Big C meeting last week, and they gave us a similar presentation there, and I found out that several cities have been able to opt out of having those message signs along Gulf Boulevard. And I said, we don't want them either. So with council's permission, I would like to send a letter to the next folks at the county saying, we don't want those message signs on Gulf Boulevard. Is that fair enough?
Go for it.
Okay, thank you. That's all I've got. Paul?
I thought this was on the agenda, but apparently it wasn't on the agenda, but it's a cleanup item. The city manager asked me to take a look at chapter 58 dealing with parking. Each of you have a copy of this red letter edition before you, and it really just cleans up some language that's in there, and I don't know what else needs to be done. I didn't get any specific negative or positive feedback in any direction, but I'd like to just go ahead and put this in the form of an ordinance and have it for you next month.
By law enforcement officer, is that including Jack now?
Yes. Any law enforcement officer, yes, he's in that category.
Good, that's what I was thinking, thank you.
That's why I put it on there.
Okay.
So with your permission, I mean, is it consensus for me to go to put an ordinance together for your consideration?
Yes. Yes.
Consider it done.
Okay. Lynn?
Yeah, just tagging on to this. If you have any other comments that we missed when I sent this to Paul for some edits, please let us know so we can make sure we clean this up. As you know, the last 2 or 3 months we've been going through the codes, trying to update them and correct them. So little by little, we're doing that. And this was one that had some things in there, talked about a police department, and we don't have a police department. So we want to make sure that we can enforce our things. Just to give you some updates, we're going to have our first spring garage sale on April 7th. We've got new signs for that are a little more glowing, so that'll be nice. And that'll come out tomorrow on the website. The playground's been removed, and it's going to be taken to the metal recycling, and hopefully we'll get a few dollars for that. As far as the traffic, I spoke to Captain Liner about it. An option maybe to get better control of the light on the corner. I would have to agree with Councilmember Chandler about the issue with the island at 13th Street. It does create problems. So they are looking into that for us, the sheriff is, because I asked him about sometimes on the weekends, maybe putting a deputy there to control the light. So as an example, you don't have these right turn people stopping. Of course, we could make a lot of revenue because most of them don't stop, they just roll through it on red. But it's more about getting the traffic moving. And if you've been across the bridge on a Saturday or Sunday, especially a couple weeks ago, it was backed up to 20th Street in Margot. So
yeah, well, it takes you from Saturday to Sunday to get across it.
So I have asked the sheriff to look into that. Also, I gave you a copy of the drawing for the mast arm. That's the updated drawing. They sent me an email. They're going to take that palm tree out there at the corner of Causeway. And the new mast arm is going to be more of an L shape than a U, which it originally was. And they're going to start work the middle of this month. So that's a big thing.
Hey, on that here, it says existing timings to remain for the signaling. Couldn't we get a flashing yellow for a right turn off of Causeway?
Well, that's what I'm asking the sheriff to be able to give me some feedback. Because at first I asked him, I said, a couple hours on a Saturday or Sunday, why can't we take our community deputy there and move that traffic, get rid of it? Because we've got issues coming from the north. They're going off at, I believe it's Morgan. They're going down Bay Shore and coming out on like 19th, trying to beat the traffic, which, it's ridiculous. So
that becomes a safety issue.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, GPS is social interactive GPS systems actually tell you to go that way.
Well, so what we're hoping to do is let the sheriff give his evaluation, and then we'll go to county traffic, because it is a county traffic light. So we just want to try to make it more expedient in moving the traffic. And it does create problems, especially coming back at night if you're coming from the north. For the people that live in the north part of the city, if you try to get out of your house at 5 o'clock, as an example, 6 o'clock, you can forget it. You'll be waiting. As an example, I went to Morgan Park 2 weeks ago. The parking meter was messed up on a Sunday. It took me about 5 minutes to get there. It took me 20 minutes to get back. So hopefully we can come to some improvement there.
Hey, one question I know, putting in the new light arms and so on, why are they waiting until spring break to do that? Is that not going to cause more problems?
Actually, most of the work is being done in the outland, so it's not really going to cause any traffic problem. Like the previous one, they were working in the right turn lane. So now, if you dead end into Causeway Boulevard, now the house that's dead end there is going to see this nice big post going across it. But that work is going to be done really in the excess lane, so that shouldn't affect the traffic that much. And we've told them they can't work at night, they only work in the daytime. The maintenance building, all except the garage doors are in, and they've still got stuccoing to do, but it's almost finished. Harrison Bridge, we put in fill for the people that live down in that area. There's some dark black dirt there. We were hoping for rain sooner, so it would settle a little bit, and then we're going to put shell over it. And we'll look at possibly doing some landscaping there, but there's no real irrigation system at that bridge. But at least it'll look nice again. And I think that's everything. I am going to attend some CRS training the end of March that I got approved for, actually in December. So, and it's not going to cost the city anything. That's a good thing. That's it.
Good thing. Motion to adjourn?
Lynn, so this is the last meeting of Pam Dot.
No, it's not.
No.
Oh, she has one more.
When's the next?
No. What day is that? March 20th, right?
March 13th is the election.
After the election, I'm sure the date is.
March 20th.
March 20th. Yeah, so the March meeting will be your last day.
Yeah.